Hi, everybody. This is David Nevins for CityBiz, and welcome to our program today. Today, we have two very special guests with us, and they are Tim Regan, President and CEO of Whiting Turner Contracting Company. Tim, welcome to our program.
Thank you, David. Good to be here.
And also Brian Pieninck, and Brian is the CEO of CareFirst. Most people know it as CareFirst BlueCross BlueShield. Brian, welcome to our program.
Thanks, David. It's great to be with you and Tim today.
It's indeed our pleasure and our honor as well. So today we're not going to be talking about your respective businesses to maybe the surprise of some of our viewers, but we're going to be talking about a very special project that you both have become involved in. And so Tim, let me start with you. And I know we've done this before for our viewers many months ago, but not too long ago, you purchased the Target store at Mondawmin Mall. And so tell us what your plans are and what you're in the process of turning that into.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to. So David, you and the listeners, viewers probably remember that Calvin Butler and I founded TouchPoint Baltimore way back in 2016, and that was and is today a community collaboration center that is located at the Mondawmin Mall. And the idea was to try to do a little bit mixing of social capital in the community there, and to try to break up the isolation in some of the underserved communities of West Baltimore. And so that's TouchPoint Baltimore, still going on and getting a lot done today. But out of that grew the opportunity for me personally, along with my wife, to buy the Target store and property, which is on the other end of the mall, actually, from where we are at TouchPoint. And so the idea is to turn it into a real kind of beehive of amenities and services for the community, quite a few of which revolve around healthcare, but other uses as well that we can get into, along with a modest retail row that looks like a little bit of a town center as well. So the idea is to create a really uplifting place for the West Baltimore community called the Village at Mondawmin.
Well, and I think you're making a great deal of progress, if I'm not mistaken, in that regard. And today's interview, and thus the announcement that happens also to be going out today, though our viewers will be watching this a few days after this announcement, involves a very special project to CareFirst. And Brian, why don't you talk a bit about that? Because I know all of our viewers, of course, know you as a health insurance company, but I'm not sure they're familiar with this project that's, I know, very near and dear to your heart as well.
Yeah, and it's funny, David, when you said that we wouldn't be talking about our business today, I saw Tim's eyebrow go up there for a minute, and it's because he and I have actually talked quite a bit about this and the fact that investing in communities and investing in business is a mutually inclusive focus. And I think it is that shared mindset that Tim has and that Whiting Turner has and that we have at CareFirst BlueCross BlueShield and that I have, that we exist within the context of community. Our employees live in communities, our members and customers live in communities, and we've got a unique responsibility as an anchor institution to ensure that we are lifting up opportunity across all of our communities. And so we see this very much, not just as an investment in West Baltimore and the opportunity that exists within individual households and individual lives in West Baltimore, but also an investment in the city, an investment in the state, and an investment in the trajectory of our economy as a whole, which is really smart business. And so we're excited about this. And I would say that the chance to do this with an organization that holds that belief, but is also willing to act on that belief, couldn't make for a better partnership than what we have and the work that's being done at the Village at Mondawmin. We're excited to fill the space. we see this as a chance, I think, to really consider how we shape the trajectory of the city of Baltimore and the communities in Baltimore. One of the things that we've spent a lot of time talking about is that we are committed to the idea of adequate and appropriate transportation that allows people to move within and across communities. And that investment can't come soon enough. But we have to act before rails and roads actually get laid. And we have an opportunity here to make an investment that doesn't just provide community services, but also provides jobs and upward economic mobility. And we want to really earmark that opportunity in partnership with Tim and his organization for West Baltimore. And we look at this as really just the beginning of what is going to be an incredible partnership for decades to come.
Yeah, so you caught me on that, Brian. I stand corrected, because business is about community and community about business as well. So kudos to you on what you're doing there. Tim, just back to you. And we were speaking of community, and Brian mentioned community multiple times. I know that you have been throughout this project a big believer in checking with the community and talking to them and involving them in terms of what the village of at Mondawmin will become. Could you talk a little bit about your interest there?
Yeah, sure. You know, what do they say? Better be lucky than good. So, you know, the fact that we've been in Mondawmin for, well, going on 8 years now. And, you know, we've done a lot of things with the communities, with the schools, with various groups, you know, sports teams and such, faith communities. So we really have had a long runway to develop relationships and just to do just cool little projects in the communities. You know, you build a little performance stage here and maybe help get a couple dead trees down, and just any number of things. And so thank goodness, you know, our level of credibility and trust, I guess, among the community was already in place before this opportunity popped up. And I think it's really the foundation for our success. And yeah, David, we had, I don't know how many meetings that were hours long and had a lot of food in them with all the community leaders to talk about, you know, okay, well, what would we do, you know, if all bets were off, you know, with this building, this piece of property. And it was really a lot of fun and a real bonding experience. When we were done, we had filled up, I don't know, 3 or 4 whiteboards, and I had to confess to everybody that you guys know that we just programmed 3 regional malls here, right? Not just a Target store. And so they all got a good laugh out of that. But we did listen, and you know, a couple of the things that they had very high on their list was uh, easier and increased access to healthcare for people of all ages, from, you know, infants, even prenatal, and all the way up to seniors. And so clearly that is being represented here. Of course, we have the Eden Bridge program of all-inclusive care for the elderly as our first signed tenant. And thank goodness Brian and CareFirst are here as our second signed tenant, in such an important deal for the village. And it just really, really creates just a stunning access for people in the neighborhood to be able to access healthcare. And then we do hope to add, and we expect to add, a primary care provider in the village. And that really kind of makes the trifecta of, you know, between having CareFirst there, along with the elder care facility of PACE and the primary family care. There's going to be no excuse for any member of the community surrounding the Mondawmin area not to be able to get to good, high quality care.
And that's very important, of course, not only to the community, to you. I know that's important to Brian as well. And so, Brian, that's kind of the segue to my next question. Is it's not really that important whether Tim called you on the phone or you called him, but I'm curious what led you to the village at Mondawmin to open this great site.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, and I would say a lot of similar lessons learned along the way that Tim highlighted, but a few things that I would say that made this special, and I think created a unique opportunity. We had already had an eye independently as an organization toward making investments, and one of the investment areas that we were focused on was West Baltimore, and we had watched and learned from the work that Tim and Calvin and others had done at TouchPoint. We've got a very prolific set of relationships in the 501c3 community and partners like the Center for Urban Families. We have been connecting increasingly with education, both public school as well as higher education, 2- and 4-year schools. And so we're seeing all of these individual efforts and partnerships to varying degrees of maturity that we're really beginning to take shape. And one of the things that Tim and I and others have discussed in other forums before we even got to this particular project is the need for organizations that have a similar focus and perspective, but also complementary resources to do more things together. Let's not run in 100 different directions trying to make impact. Let's run together in the same or similar direction. Let's work in a complementary way. Let's invest in a complementary way. But the point that Tim made about listening and learning is such a critical part of that process. And our folks originally had planned a concept in West Baltimore, and we decided to get in the car and to go visit with community and have a conversation about what the community saw and perceived as the needs and the opportunities that existed. And coming out of that, they really taught us that the most impactful thing that we could do in partnership with the work that Tim and team were doing is really to bring jobs and opportunities to the community. And we look at this and we say, 18.3% of the US GDP is the healthcare economy. There is a massive amount of opportunity that exists across a continuum of jobs and skill sets, some of which may require degrees, some of which may not require degrees. But what if we could create these prolific on-ramps to opportunity, leveraging the physical space and the resources that Tim already started to collect in partnership with the Center for Urban Families, in partnership with Cobb State University, all organizations that have a vested interest in the community that we're going to invest in and that we're going to continue to grow together. And I would say that was a critical part of what informed what came next. And we look at really this is the opening steps, and each of us learning from one another, each of us continuing to learn and be informed by the community, and growing and scaling this first series of efforts in partnership together.
Well, again, kudos across the board to you and your colleagues, and to Tim and his colleagues. Tim, let me give you the last word, if you don't mind, just to, I know you're not going to announce anything else right now, but just whet our viewers' appetites as to what the future may also hold for the village at Mondawmin. You don't have to be specific, just
no, it's fine. No, it's fine, actually. And I'm not going to mince words here. Brian and CareFirst have kind of put us over the hump. They really have. I've mentioned primary care, which will be a big element of the remaining space that we have. So we do need to get that deal done. We have conversations going on, and I'm very confident that it comes together. But beyond that, the TouchPoint space that will be in the village will be 3 times the size of the one that's on the other side of the mall there currently at Mondawmin. And so, the programming that Thread and Baltimore Core, Whiting Turner, BGE, and the Greater Mondawmin Coordinating Council will be able to do is going to be scaled quite a bit. So that's a big space that is going in. That should get started soon. Whiting Turner is going to have an office in there, and that's going to get going soon. That's going to be 9,000 square feet, so that's significant. And then the other big piece is going to be a child care center. And we don't have the deal together just yet, but we have a really highly thought of woman who already has a couple of facilities in operation in the city. And so we're trying to get that deal put together. And that is really it, except for the retail row in the front. We have purposely held off on the retail row so that as we draw in those local entrepreneurs, and we still have high hopes of having mostly homegrown, quite a few Black-owned businesses right out front there. Think food, coffee, and maybe a little sit-down restaurant and a couple of shops and what have you. We don't have a lot of spaces, but it'll be kind of cool. But we really wanted them to know who was behind in the big spaces and how many people before we started kind of painting that picture and drawing them in. So that should be coming soon. But I think, David, by the end of 2024, by the end of this year, you're going to see at least 75, 80% of this village completely occupied and activated.
Well, I know that the community, if you go back a few years, was very concerned and very upset when Target exited West Baltimore. But I have to say, and I've spoken to, Tim, as you well know, to many members of the West Baltimore community, and they're really thrilled with what you're doing there. And Brian, this takes it, as Tim noted, to the next level. So again, finally, congratulations to CareFirst. Tim, congratulations to you. Anything, any last words,
Well,
gentlemen?
Brian, I'm going to give you the last word, but let me, I'm going to get in front of you here and just say, I got to give kudos to my good friend Brian here, because at the kind of announcement that we made that I was buying the property about a year and a half ago, I didn't even know Brian was coming to that. And, afterwards, of course, there was a big crowd and everybody was chatting and it was very fun and everything. Well, Brian pulled me on the side and I said, "Wow, thank you for coming, Brian. This is great." And he said, "Tim, this is awesome. We need to talk." And they turned and walked away. And I just got goosebumps like, whoa, okay, this is exciting. And that's culminating in today. So thank you.
Brian,
Yeah,
I'll let you
can't-
respond.
No, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the work that Tim has done. I'm grateful for his openness and receptivity to traveling with a few other like-minded and interested folks as we are, and for the friendship that we have. And I would just encourage for any of the business leaders out there that are trying to think about how their business relates to community, really carefully consider the work that you do, the people that you do it with. That, as much as anything else, is a lesson that's been learned here. And for CareFirst, when we think about healthcare, 80% of my health and Tim's health and David's health and all of our listeners' health and the health of the communities is informed by social and environmental circumstances, 80%. And so if we're not in the business of jobs, if we're not in the business of housing, if we're not in the business of transportation, if we're not in the business of adequate access to healthcare and resources and food, we're not in the business of healthcare. And so I think you really have to consider who you're traveling with, the people that you surround yourself with, and why you exist in the roles that you're in. And I couldn't be more proud to be along for that ride with Tim.
Well, we will let that eloquent closing, thank you, Brian, speak for itself. This has been a great conversation. I think our viewers know how to reach you both, should they be so interested. And again, let me thank you. We've had two of Maryland's superstar CEOs representing their superstar companies as our guests today. Tim Regan, CEO of Whiting Turner, and Brian Pieninck, CEO of CareFirst. Thank you so much for joining us today, both of you gentlemen. This is David Nevins for CityBiz, and thank you for watching.